What's up, guys? It's Analyst, and we're back again. It is now week 6, and I'm joined again by Luke. What's up, Luke?
How's it going?
Good,
Glad to
good.
be back.
Yeah, back to back. Had a better game last night, right, than we had the week before.
Sort of.
Chicago versus sort of, I think, is the right way to describe that. But I think it was very close to being 0-0 at halftime. Thankfully, there was a field goal there. Otherwise, I don't know what I would have done, but a lot of the people who we needed to play well did not necessarily play well. Give me some of your thoughts from last night.
Yeah, pretty much the only important good takeaway that I had was it looks like Brian Robinson's taking over this backfield in Washington, finally. He got on the field, which is just awesome for him after everything he's been going through. And he was on the field a lot. He had far more carries than either of the other two guys and even put in a goal line touchdown, which was their only touchdown of the game. So, yeah, looking good for him.
Yeah, and I think what was really encouraging on the flip side here in Chicago was the usage of Darnell Mooney, right? Because and just Justin Field throwing the ball in general, it's not something we've seen over the first couple games. And if that's going to continue, then we might have to reassess how we value guys like Cole Kmet, Darnell Mooney, and things like that. Because people in this offense, the pass catchers, might actually start to be valuable. I've seen Darnell Mooney dropped in a handful of leagues that I'm in, including the league that we're in. As well, I think my brother Anthony dropped Darnell Mooney literally 2 days ago. So It's going to be a fight for the waiver wire next week.
Yeah, 12 targets. If he's gonna, I don't even know if they were throwing the ball 12 times a game. The previous weeks
coming into this game, he only had 10 catches on the year. So 12 targets in one game is already a huge upgrade. But
yeah,
there's not too much else to take away from last night. Khalil Herbert broke off this huge run. Should have scored, but I think he got tired because he literally just stopped and waited for the defense. I think if he kept going, he might have scored, but who knows? But he was doing his thing. David Montgomery just under 10 points. Washington ends up winning this game, but I think Chicago played a good game. And if they start throwing the ball effectively, I think they're going to have something there. So let's not give this game any more attention than that. Just wanted to remind you guys before we get into the rest of these games, you can use code ANALYST on Underdog Fantasy, and they're going to match your first deposit up to $100, meaning you put in $50 when you create an account, they're going to give you $50 to use. We post the pick'ems every Thursday. If you guys want to go in and pick some of the over-unders for each of these players, you can maybe win some money. So definitely check it out. And before we get into these games too, we have a question for you guys because last night, after the game, late into last night, my current situation on my fantasy roster is that I have no running backs. I was going to go into this week with Nyheim Hines, Alexander Mattison, and just kind of flip the coin and hope that something works out. So I hit up Luke here and I said that I needed some sort of running back. He's got Devin Singletary on his bench. He picked up Eno Benjamin. Who else did he? Tony Pollard.
And Kareem Hunt.
Austin Eckler. Do you have a couple other running backs too? I feel like there was
Henderson and McKinnon.
McKinnon, we'll count for what it is. But yeah, Henderson on his bench. So I see this guy has a ton of running backs. Clearly, I'm struggling. I'm trying to make a trade with him. So this is what we came up with. This is a PPR league. I gave him Taysom Hill, Jameson Williams, who I think Jameson Williams is going to be a stud. But besides the point, I gave him Taysom Hill, Jameson Williams, and Alexander Mattison. And he gave me Devin Singletary, Tony Pollard, and Kadarius Toney. So my initial thoughts, because annually I make a trade where he just kind of screws me over because I overthink something or I don't think enough about something. I don't think that's the case this year. I only picked up Taysom Hill because I wanted to trade him. Jameson Williams himself, I like his potential outcome, but my receivers are loaded. I have CeeDee Lamb, Cortland Sutton, Michael Thomas, DeAndre Hopkins, Traylon Burks, now Kadarius Toney. So I don't know how much I would have used Jameson Williams anyway. And then for me, trading Alexander Mattison for a guy like Alexander Mattison for a guy like Tony Pollard Pollard is also kind of the same level handcuff to where if the starter got hurt, they'd be immediate RB1. And at the same time, Pollard also has standalone value, which is what I need. So for me, I feel like that trade makes sense. I want to hear your side, Luke, and then, hopefully we get some feedback from the audience at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I've been starting Austin Eckler and then some rotation of Kareem Hunt, Devin Singletary, and Tony Pollard every week. Feels like I'm picking the wrong one every week. So what this did for me is now I'm going to be starting Eckler and probably Eno Benjamin this week with Hunt on the bench. But looking forward, I'll have Eckler and Hunt. Eckler's my RB1. Hunt will be, my serviceable RB2 for now.
Sure.
And I was just really going for that home run, So with Madison, there's always a game or two where Dalvin Cook gets hurt and Madison will come in and play. So I'm hoping, well, not hoping for injury, but just like the home run potential of Madison is,
Sure.
in my opinion, higher than that of Pollard. I feel like a Cook injury is more common and more likely. And then with Taysom Hill, it is what it is. Like, he's on my bench for now, but I mean, if he's putting up however many, he's averaging 16 points a game right now. I'm sure that won't hold up, but with the state of the tight end market right now, he's a decently valuable asset that I can just hold on to. With we don't know what's going to happen with George Kittle, who is my starting tight end.
Yeah.
And yeah, I liked Jameson Williams coming out. He was my second favorite receiver in this class. So
Nice.
I'm hoping the talent translates to something when he's healthy and ready to play.
Yeah, and to the point of Taysom Hill, and we'll talk about that more when we get to the Saints game here. But talk about a tight end. Like, if you have an inconsistent tight end anyway, might as well have someone who has the upside that Taysom has, right? Like, if you're going to go into a week and you're going to start like Tyler Conklin or Hayden Hurst, who like at most can get you like 12 points and you'll be happy, might as well have someone like Taysom Hill, who at most can get you 40 points and you'll be happy, right? And the floor is still the same to where they could do nothing. So that's what I feel like about Taysom Hill. That's kind of where his value comes from. And in our league, too, for what it's worth, we do have some points for kick returns as well, which Taysom Hill does do. So who knows? But all right, that's enough time on that. If you guys let us know who you think won that trade. Also, don't forget, Underdog, sign up for that. Use code ANALYST. All right. We're going to jump in here. Reminder, I'm Joe. That is Luke. And this is the Falcons versus the San Francisco 49ers. So we'll talk about the Falcons real quick. This running back room is a mess, right? I mean, for a team that ran the ball 14 consecutive times last week, you would think that someone would kind of show out as that guy. Tyler Algier did lead in snaps and carries, but ultimately he did not end up being the one who scored. It was a tough matchup last week, and it's also going to be a tough matchup this week against the San Francisco 49ers. I'm going to fade all the Falcons running backs. I think it's just going to be a continued crumbled mess. When you look at the receivers, Drake London, he struggled last week as well. I mentioned they ran 14 times in a row last week. But Drake London, he's going to go against Charvarius Ward, who is the number 6 cornerback in the league, according to PFF, as far as coverage. Not great. Falcons are underdogs by 5.5 points, so theoretically they should be able to pass the ball more, but that didn't stop them last week when they ran 14 times in a row. So I'm going to likely, I don't have any strong opinions about Drake London because I think he can still come through, especially with Kyle Pitts coming back. And Kyle Pitts practiced 2 days in a row. He's likely to play. He's been getting consistent targets. Drake London's going to see the tougher matchup with Charvarius Ward. Crazy enough, I think this is a game where Kyle Pitts is startable. I just think everything kind of aligns for him to be the way they move the ball in this game. They don't have Cordell Patterson. Drake London's going to have Charvarius Ward on him. I just think this is the time where if you have Kyle Pitts, I'm not like too stressed about starting him this week, right? Like I have Dallas Goedert in Pitts in our league, and I'm still going to start Goddard over Pitts, but I don't hate Pitts this week. Do you have any thoughts on the Falcons portion of this?
Yeah, just to expand on Pitts a little bit. I mean, it'll kind of come down to what the Niners do with him defensively, because if they throw Fred Warner on him and just have him shadow, we might have another problem. But between all the injuries the Falcons are dealing with, and the fact that they should be likely losing this game, they are going to have to pass the ball at some point, I think. And
Theoretically.
yeah, and Pitts, again, theoretically, should be their go-to guy if that's the case. So I don't know if I'm overly excited, but yeah, I could see why you would start him.
Yeah, and that's a good point about Fred Warner too. Is one of the best, coverage linebackers in the entire league. So definitely some concern there if that ends up being the case. But on the flip side, I just have some notes on the running backs here. Tevin Coleman last week played 28% of the offensive snaps, had 11 touches, which resulted in 2 touchdowns. The team officially signed him to the 53-man roster, and this is a revenge game, right, for Tevin Coleman against the Atlanta Falcons, which I'm sure over the years he's played them already. But still interesting here. Jeff Wilson seeing 15-plus touches in each of the last 4 games. Atlanta's ranked 21st against defending running backs. So I'm still firing up Jeff Wilson. I'm not necessarily starting Tevin Coleman at all. He's just someone I'm kind of keeping an eye on. It seems like he's the clear number 2 in this offense as of right now. So any thoughts on the 49ers side before we move on?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, Jeff Wilson versus Tevin Coleman will be something to monitor, but until we see something different, I'm starting Wilson and
Yeah.
not confident about Coleman's usage. Niners receivers, I'd probably start Samuel and Ayuk. If you need to start Brandon Ayuk, I'd do it. Samuel, obviously, you're going to play. And I just want to shout out our guy, Jordan Mason, who got on the field for 1 snap last week. Nowhere near the fantasy lineup, but
Woo!
he got on the field.
Oh, dude, the hype surrounding Jordan Mason, like in like the the little corner of like the fantasy world, was pretty big. It's kind of disappointing to see they're not even letting this guy get a run in. I feel like if Jeff Wilson were to get injured, then maybe we could see some Jordan Mason. But until that point, we're clearly not going to see any Jordan Mason. It could easily be Tyrion Davis-Price, who I think had 14 carries in the last game he played. So who knows? But yeah, it seems like the Jordan Mason hype train kind of died. Have you seen him though? I mean, this guy's a beast. He looks like a monster at running back. So theoretically, he should be touching the ball, but that's besides the point. Also, besides the point, the Patriots hosting the Browns hosting the New England Patriots at 1:00 on Sunday. Looking at the Browns here, I mean, obviously you're starting Kareem Hunt. I mean, obviously you're starting Nick Chubb. I think Kareem Hunt's also pretty decent play this week. Patriots, as a Patriots fan, I know that our weakness against pass catching running backs, for whatever reason, over the course of the years, just seems to be there. Receivers, Amari Cooper. This Patriots secondary is not great. Their rookie Jack Jones has been balling out, but he's not anywhere near a shutdown corner right now. So I think Amari Cooper is still in line to have a pretty good game, as well as David Njoku, who has 23 targets over the last 3 weeks. That's averaging over 7.5 targets per game. Patriots are 21st against tight ends this year for whatever that's worth, right? Because that's kind of a sticky stat. Like if you verse Travis Kelce and he scores 4 touchdowns, and then you verse running tight ends who scores 0 points the next 2 weeks, you're still going to be like the worst defense against tight ends, right? So it's a very sticky stat depending on who you're playing against. But any thoughts on the Browns as a Cleveland Browns as a Kareem Hunt owner?
Yeah, I will be thinking about putting him in my lineup, but I'm probably not going to do that. But that's just because I think I have better options. I don't think sitting Kareem Hunt is a necessity. I think if you have him and he's one of your better options, throw him in your lineup. I do think Bill Belichick will probably make Jacoby Brissett struggle, just like he made Jared Goff struggle last week. So he will be looking to his established players like Cooper or Njoku to try and get some sort of offense going. Yeah. But I also think this commonly leads to a lot of dump offs and a lot of running the ball. And we know the Browns love to run the ball. So I don't know if both Cooper and Njoku will have a good game, but I'm sure at least one of them will get looked at a ton. And if they do, then you probably are better off starting them than sitting them.
My bet would honestly be Njoku at that point because Cooper's kind of disappeared, reappeared. And Njoku's been pretty solid over the last couple
Mhm.
weeks. He's getting consistent targets. The team's been saying a lot of good things about him. So my bet would be on David Njoku, kind of continues what he's been doing. And I don't really think Patriots have anyone on defense who can kind of match up against David Njoku like that. I mean, this guy's a physical beast. He's tall, he's huge, and his arm length, I think, is the best part about him. Of like, dude is like he can snatch it. Oh man,
Yeah.
you haven't seen David Njoku at the combine, I'd recommend that. But anyway, going to the Patriots side, no Damian Harris, right? It looks like, by the way, Mac Jones might be back this game. Honestly, like, not only do Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones look the exact same, but like for me, if Zappi's playing, I'm not like, oh, adjust this. If Mac Jones is playing, I'm not like, oh, adjust this. They're kind of both like very similar to me in terms of how I would treat the rest of this team. So for me, it doesn't really matter. I kind of partly like Bailey Zappi a little bit more, but that's besides the point. Ramondre Stevens' season is upon us with Damian Harrison out. Damian Harris out. He's going against a team that's bottom 5 against running backs. Stevenson has seen 17 plus touches in each of his last 3 games, 27 touches last week, led all running backs at 90% of snaps. This is what this Patriots offense looks like without Damian Harris. He is a must start this week against the Browns. A guy who's also kind of trending towards must start territory is Jacoby Myers, who's been averaging 17.6 points per game. This season, he's averaging 9 targets per game. He's clearly the number 1 option on this team, and that was last week when he was coming back from a knee injury. He scored a touchdown last week, by the way, which not enough people are talking about because the thing with Jacoby has always been he doesn't score TDs. He doesn't score TDs. I think he scored 1 last year, and he scored 1 last week. So I think this is good things coming for Jacoby Myers. If you have him, he's going to be a weekly wide receiver 2/flex. So any other thoughts on this Patriots side here?
Did Damian Harris get ruled out? Was that a this morning thing?
So he's dealing with a hamstring injury. It's projected that he's going to be out this game and he's going to miss multiple weeks. So
Yeah.
he hasn't officially been ruled out, but that's kind of more of a Patriots thing because Bill's not going to rule anyone out until like it's obvious they're not on the field.
Regardless, even if they said he was active, I still wouldn't want any part of him because knowing Bill, he'll probably not put him on the field for a single snap anyway. But yeah, I mean, you pretty much touched on it. Ramondre Stevenson, got to start him. Even if Damian Harris happened to be healthy, I'd still be starting him. He's just, as you said, he was the bell cow last week when Damian went down. And yeah, the Patriots love their short game. They love running the ball. So between Ramondre and Jacoby Myers, probably should be playing both of them, but especially Ramondre Stevenson. If you have him, you have to start him at this point. There's not really another choice.
Yeah, I'm in a position where I get to start him in a couple leagues, so I'm kind of hyped about that. One thing I'm not hyped about is the Green Bay Packers versus the New York Jets. Don't you love my transitions? I'm just like, I work hard on this. Well, who's not working hard? The Green Bay Packers running backs. Aaron Jones has been doing his thing. AJ Dillon has not. AJ Dillon just hasn't been able to string. But I was fighting that yawn for like a minute. I don't know if you could tell, but I was just fighting it so hard. AJ Dillon has really just not come through as of late. Against the Jets, this is definitely going to be a closer matchup than I'm sure anyone thinks, considering the Packers literally lost to the Giants last week. The Patriots with Bailey Zappi coming in took them to overtime. Like, this is not the same Packers team that we're used to, and this is not the same Jets team that we're used to either. So Aaron Jones, I'm going to roll with him. I'm probably going to end up sitting A.J. Dillon. He just hasn't been getting enough workload for me to be like, yeah, let's start him. Rodgers is actually getting the ball down the field to guys like Allen Lazard, who either has a touchdown or 100-plus yards in every single game this season. So if you're starting Allen Lazard, you were either getting a touchdown or 100 yards. Not both, right? You're not getting both, but you're getting one or the other. So he's been a pretty safe flex play thus far, and I don't think that's really going to be different here. Sauce Gardner has been very good as a rookie. I think he's PFF's highest graded corner, not rookie, highest graded corner this year. So I have some concerns about Allen Lazard, but at the same time, even in the red zone, he's likely to just pick off a touchdown because of how big he is and the trust that Aaron Rodgers has in him. Randall Cobb, he had like 7 catches for 99 yards last week. I think that was a little bit more of a flash in the pan. If that becomes consistent, then maybe it's time to start thinking about picking up Randall Cobb again. But for now, it's just not on my mind. Any thoughts on the Packers side of this?
Yeah, that's both of the points I had. The receiver room is weird, man. I don't know what I would do. I mean, they were at one point torching the Giants last week, and then I don't know what happened in the second half. They were getting locked up by the practice squad corners that were on the field. One of them was Nick McLeod, who I'm a Giants fan and I personally have never heard of. I mean, and they were completely locked up. So I don't know who I'm expecting to produce. Allen Lazard, as you said, seems to have a pretty high floor, but Randall Cobb had 13 targets last week. Romeo Doubs had the most targets the week before that. You don't really know what to look for at this point. I think the only must-start player on the Packers is Aaron Jones at this point. Allen Lazard has a decent floor if you want to play him, and I mean, it's really just a guess with these receivers at this point. I don't know what else to say really about them.
Yeah, there's not really too much there. Like Romeo Doubs is probably the guy you're stashing or like flexing if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Watson dealing with an injury, he's out again. He's just kind of having a messy rookie year at this point. Oh, yeah. Well, they're basically just using Watson as like a runner. From what we've seen ever since that drop touchdown, they just kind of like, all right, you just kind of are a third running back, so that's fine. But Breece Hall on the Jets side, his snaps went from 27% snaps in week 2. He went up to 51%, then 66%, then 69%, and he's just been trending in a direction where he's becoming a must-start RB1. Even last week, where most of his points in yardage came from like 1 or 2 plays, he had 2 touchdowns that were vultured by Carter. I wasn't watching the game live, but I remember seeing on the ESPN app, I just see like, Breece ran all the way to the 1. I'm like, oh, he's just going to knock it in. Michael Carter 1-yard touchdown. Yeah. And then same deal. He gets all the way to the 1. Michael Carter 1-yard touchdown. So as big as Breece's week was last week, it could have been a lot bigger with those 2 touchdowns. So Breece for me is a must start moving forward. Guys who are not must starts, Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, they all tied with a 19% target share. There's way too much distribution and not nearly enough volume for these receivers as of right now. I'm likely just not going to be sitting any of these guys, assuming I don't have to. Depends on what your lineup looks like. But, yeah, just not really tied to any of those guys. Got any thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, this receiver room seems to be another mess. The difference is I think these are good players.
Yeah. It's a good mess.
They're just distributing the ball in a way that is pretty unpredictable. I mean, we saw the chemistry that Zach Wilson had with Elijah Moore last year. So I do think it's worth stashing him. Definitely not starting him for now. Yeah. But him and Garrett Wilson both, with the chemistry Zach Wilson showed with Elijah Moore last year, and Garrett Wilson being the second receiver taken off the board this year, I do think both of them are worth roster spots. I just don't know if you can start either one of them at this point.
Yeah, I feel that. Well, not knowing if you could start, let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts. that was kind of a stretch. I feel like I forced that one. But we're going to talk about the Colts. Jonathan Taylor back at practice. Nyheim Hines still out. So I'd imagine Nyheim Hines does not play in this game, considering how bad that concussion looked on Thursday night. Take the time he needs. But JT being back is huge. It's looking like he's going to play in this matchup with Hines. He could see additional targets as well. If he, for whatever reason, does not play, and if Hines doesn't play, then Deion Jackson is your guy as like a desperate RB2. But at the same time, I think Jonathan Taylor is going to end up suiting up here. Alec Pierce led the team with a 22% target share. and has tied the lead or led the team with targets over the last 2 weeks. So Alec Pierce has been the go-to guy for Matt Ryan. He's definitely got flex capability going forward. I would label him as a desperate kind of start, and I think Michael Pittman can also get back on track in a game like this too. The corners for Jacksonville have not been great, so that's the route I'm going. Any notes on the Colts here?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Pierce and Pittman continue to go the rest of this season, because Pittman's been the clear one in this offense really since he was drafted. And with Alec Pierce now here and Matt Ryan not playing good football, it doesn't feel like there's going to be enough for both of them to be fed every week. So that's a situation to monitor for sure. But for now, I agree. Both of them have a flex low end wide receiver 2 value until we see what happens. And yeah, the running back situation, you kind of just have to play it by ear. It seems like Taylor's going to play, but if he doesn't, you're right. Deion Jackson. I don't know if I get too excited about that. Phillip Lindsay played a decent amount of snaps last week as well. So you kind of just hope Taylor plays.
Yeah, I feel that. But, looking at the Jaguars side, Travis Etienne starting to pull away from James Robinson as a starting running back in this offense. I've been trying to buy low on him in so many leagues. It's just not working. It's not working. But I'm going to keep trying. So Etienne pulling away from James Robinson. This is a tweet from Graham Barfield, who I'm pretty sure works for Fantasy Points. But Etienne has had 5+ yards on 45.5% of his carries, which is the 5th best in the league. He's forced 0.3 missed tackles per carry, which is the 6th best. And he's got 3.3 yards after contact, which is the 10th best. His snaps have gone up from 37% to 43% to 51% to 53%. Remind you all that Etienne, this is basically his rookie year, right? He didn't play a single game last year, so he's kind of starting to get the hang of it. James Robinson's kind of taking more of a backseat role. I think that was always the plan. It's just Robinson was playing so well early on, and Etienne was just making all these adjustments because, he went into a completely different system last year with Urban Meyer. And now he goes into this year having to learn a whole new system with Doug Peterson. So that's, going to take some time. And also Christian Kirk, he disappeared a little bit last week, but Doug Peterson regrets that. He said, and I quote, "You don't ever want to be in a situation where he has 3 or 4 targets." And he's talking about Christian Kirk here. He needs to be up there, 9, 10, 11 targets. So lately, coach speak has been actually true, right? Anytime lately, over the last couple of weeks, it feels like when a coach says something, like when they say, "Oh, we want to get Rashad White more involved," all of a sudden he scores a touchdown. He's playing 40% of the snaps. Now we got Doug Peterson here saying Christian Kirk disappeared. Saying you don't ever want to be in a situation where he only has 3 or 4 targets. You need to get him 9, 10, 11 targets. So I believe it. I think Christian Kirk is going to bounce back in this game specifically. He'll probably have upwards of 9, 10, or 11 targets. So I'm going to throw him back in my lineup without any issues.
Yeah. ETN is nearing the Breece Hall territory of starting to take over, and you got to start him every week. I don't know if I'm quite there yet because I guess the touchdown production hasn't been there yet, but he's getting more usage than James Robinson. He's on the field for more, and he just looks better. He's been more efficient. So I'm starting ETN this week if I have him. I also have been trying to buy low on him before I traded you Devin Singletary. That's something I tried to do with Devin Singletary. It did not work out.
Interesting, because it's exactly where my mind went.
Yep. Yeah. I would start ETN this week. And just a small note, if you're desperate at tight end, Evan Ingram had 10 targets last week. And it seems like the Colts are probably going to be without Shaquille Leonard again. So that should open up the middle of the field a little bit. And yeah, if you need a desperate start at tight end, Evan Ingram has a decent shot at getting you some points. He had 12 points last week with 10 targets. So
not great for 10 targets, but we'll take it.
Yeah.
You're hoping if you see 10 targets, you get a little more than 12 points, but Evan Ingram will Evan Ingram, so that's fine. So going into this next game here, I didn't have a fun transition. Sorry about that. But Miami Dolphins versus the Minnesota Vikings. Skylar Thompson making his first career start. At least it's looking like that. I mean, people were in love with him as a prospect, right? A lot of people felt like he was a diamond in the rough at QB. Didn't really see anything last week that was encouraging, but just sit him. Just sit him. We'll talk about just sitting him. Chase Edmonds. So less snaps than Myles Gaskin and Raheem Mostert. I dropped him immediately in our league. He was like my running back too for multiple weeks, but he had like one touch last week, something like that. Like he played like less snaps than Myles Gaskin. That's just kind of weird, right? And even to the point where if Raheem Mostert, who as we know he was injured this week, he is going to end up playing. He typically gets these yawns. He typically gets a injury every year, which is unfortunate, but he's an injury-prone back. So if he does end up missing time at any point, you would hope that Edmonds would kind of step up and be that guy in this offense. But the fact that they started Myles Gaskin over him was not encouraging at all. So it would probably end up just being another mess. They might even just pick up another running back if Raheem Mostert got hurt, because Raheem Mostert saw 21 opportunities last week, played 69% of the offensive snaps, and even in the losing game script, he scored 19.2 fantasy points. So if you have Mostert, he's going to be in every week low-end RB2 slash flex. And otherwise, I'm just dropping Edmonds in my league. I know you have a different opinion on Edmonds because we talked about that last night. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, after that trade, I had to drop somebody because some reason. I forget what the reason was, but I did have to drop someone to make that trade go through.
Yeah,
I ended up dropping James Cook. Oh, it is what it is. I put Jameson Williams on my. Oh, that's why, because I had Kadarius Toney on my IR.
Oh, yeah.
So
illegally.
I put Jameson. All right, relax. He hasn't played a game since week 1 or week 2. Jameson Williams goes to IR, and I picked up Chase Edmonds. I mean, kind of the same logic here. If Raheem Mostert were to get hurt, which is not the most out of this world situation, it seems to happen every year, I would hope that Edmonds would be the first guy they look to. If this trend continues, I will not be rostering him going forward. But we'll just kind of wait and see what happens this week and get ahead of the waiver wire. Worst comes to worst, I drop him for someone else next week. It's not the biggest deal.
Yeah,
and
I feel that.
Yeah, as for the rest of the Dolphins, I think Mostert should get a lot of volume, considering the fact that Skylar Thompson is their quarterback this week. Yeah. Also last week, he was looking to dump the ball off to a running back or throw it to Tyreek Hill most of the game. So I don't know if I'm necessarily sitting Jalen Waddle because he's kind of too good of a player to just flat out say sit him, but I'm not expecting a big game from him, especially again with Skylar Thompson at quarterback. He did not have a lot of targets last week. I think it was 3. He did have catches on all 3 of them, but I just would temper my expectations for Jalen Waddle this week with Thompson at quarterback.
Yeah, and I imagine when you go into the game, like during the week, game planning with Skylar Thompson, you kind of start to put some plays together. Like I assume we're going to see a lot of screens to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, bubble screens. I'm sure we'll even get some end arounds and jet runs and stuff like that from Tyreek Hill in that backfield. So that's kind of what I'm expecting there. But for the Vikings side, I don't really have too many notes here. I feel like the Vikings offense, we just kind of know what it is at this point. It's going to be Dalvin Cook. If he gets hurt, it's going to be Alexander Madison. Justin Jefferson, of course, you're starting. Adam Thielen, there's not really too much to dive into there. He's sometimes good, sometimes not. I don't know. Just kind of what Adam Thielen does. So let's just move on to the Saints here so we can move it along. New Orleans Saints versus the Cincinnati Bengals. Jameson Winston practiced limited on Thursday and Wednesday, so it looks like he's going to suit up for this game. But Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas both didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday. They said, like literally after the Saints game last week, that Michael Thomas would be expected to play this week. There was a report that literally said expect Michael Thomas to play next week. As of right now, with that foot injury, he is still not practicing unless he practices today, which is Friday, in a limited or full, kind of what am I trying to say? Practice capacity. Oh my gosh, that's the word. Capacity. You knew what I was trying to say. You got it. You got capacity. So unless he practices in some sort of capacity, I would assume Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry both miss this week. Chris Olave, your guy, is limited in practice with a concussion. Limited is good, so that looks like he's going to be trending towards actually playing in this game. And we mentioned Taysom Hill in the start of this episode. I do want to touch on the fact that he scored a ton of fantasy points last week, and that was on just 10 touches and 30% of the offensive snaps. The team did say that they want to continue to involve Hill as much as they have, especially when they have their guys out. So if Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry are out again, I'm not saying Taysom Hill is going to blow up, but I will say that he could have some potential value at the tight end position. So I would consider him a desperate start this week if Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry are out. Any thoughts on the Saints here?
Yeah, and I mean, Taysom Hill's also a unique situation where he may have only been on the field for 30% of the snaps, but he's going to touch the ball pretty much every time he is on the field with the way they use him. So he could be an interesting start. And if Chris Olave plays, you got to start him at this point. He's been Jameis Winston's favorite receiver. He was Andy Dalton's favorite receiver. I guess he was the only receiver that Andy Dalton was really playing with, but still.
Yeah.
And I mean, that concussion, it was another one that looked rough last week. I know he caught the touchdown and kind of got knocked out for a few seconds while catching it. But it does seem like he's trending towards playing. So if he does, you got to play him. And then just Jameis Winston. I don't know where I'm at with Jameis Winston. I kind of had high expectations for this offense coming into the year, and they were not met while he was playing. At this point, it feels like Andy Dalton may be the better fit for this offense. He was distributing the ball, kind of going back to where Drew Brees had been taking them and getting the ball to Alvin Kamara in the short field and putting the ball in his hands and hoping for the best. Jameis was certainly not doing that. So if Jameis returns, I'm kind of scared for Alvin Kamara. I'd be scared of him returning to where he was at the beginning of the year, where he was not producing to where his draft capital would indicate. So this is another kind of just wait and see week. We'll see who plays and who does what and adjust going forward.
It seems like more than us talking about like the players, we're just kind of reading off an injury report, because that's what this whole Saints team feels like at this point. Just like the New Orleans injuries. That's the new name there. But looking at the Bengals here, I mean, T. Higgins did not practice Wednesday. He did not practice Thursday. There's a chance he doesn't suit up in this game, which would mean Tyler Boyd gets a bit of a bump, and Hayden Hurst becomes a potential interesting, desperate tight end play as well. So those are two guys I'm looking at in the case that T. Higgins does not play. Any final thoughts on the Bengals before we go over to the Giants and Ravens?
There's not much really to say. I mean, the way this offense has looked, it's looked really, really sluggish.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm still starting Joe Mixon. I'm starting Jamar Chase as every week. Joe Burrow, on the other hand, I'm not too confident about from a fantasy perspective this week. With that Saints pass rush getting at him behind his offensive line, I'd be a little bit concerned about throwing him into my lineup if I had another option. So definitely fading Joe Burrow this week, but typical case of start your studs when it comes to the running backs and receivers.
I agree. Talk about studs. Oh, wrong game. No, I'm kidding. Saquon Barkley. He was limited with a shoulder injury, but he came back in the last week's game, so no worries here that he's not going to play. But Kadarius Toney, who I just traded for, still didn't practice, and it's funny, instead of hamstring, they say hamstrings, because apparently he injured both his hamstrings now. So Toney's going to be a little while. He's not an IR, which is a positive sign, but the fact that he's both his hamstrings injured means he's probably going to be a couple weeks out. So Rookie Wan'Dale Robinson was limited both Wednesday and Thursday. At this point, we're kind of just scratching for any single Giants receiver who we don't hate to just kind of be healthy enough to be on the field so we can be interested in him. That kind of just feels like what we think about Wan'Dale Robinson right now. As the rookie, they said they wanted to get him really involved. Darius Slayton led the team last week, so I think they're clearly looking for someone to come in and be that guy. So Wan'Dale Robinson, if he's going to play in this game, I don't think he's a bad stash. Like, I'm not starting him by any means, but if you have that bench spot, throw him in there, see what he does this week. If he gets a ton of targets or becomes really involved, then he, could be flex worthy going forward. But as of right now, I'm just kind of stashing him. Daniel Bellinger last week went back up to a 73.9% route participation rate. As I mentioned, viable tight ends are typically at 80% or higher, so just not quite ready for Bellinger just yet. And I'm just going to get into the Ravens too, just so we can move it along here. J.K. Dobbins only played 40% of the snaps last week, which was less than Kenyon Drake. Big surprise there. Not really too much of an indicator of why, other than maybe the load on Dobbins the week before was too much. I don't know if game flow really was the reason, but I was just going to lower my expectations on Dobbins going forward. And Rashad Bateman's still dealing with a foot injury. He's likely going to miss this game as well, which means Devin Duvernay could be in another great spot. I think he becomes a desperate start against this Giants team.
I don't even know if I'd say desperate at this point. The Giants secondary is very banged up. Both of their week 1 starting corners may miss this game. I know Aaron Robinson is on IR, and Adoree Jackson has a knee and a neck problem at the same time that he's dealing with. So if that's the case and they both miss this game, I mean, Devin Duvernay has the potential to be a quality wide receiver too this week. He's, besides Mark Andrews, going to be likely the only thing that Lamar's looking for in this offense, because he hasn't really gotten anything from his running backs. I mean, there was a lot of preseason hype with Isaiah Likely, but that hasn't really turned into regular season success. And none of these other receivers are really stepping up. So I would expect a pretty good game from Devin Duvernay, assuming Rashad Bateman misses the game. And yeah, I mean, in our deep league, I've been stashing Wan'Dale Robinson, and I'm kind of looking forward to him getting on the field. But as you said, not really worthy of a start. And then one final point on the Ravens defense. They just put Marcus Williams on IR. And we saw what this defense could look like at times against the Dolphins and then the Bills. The Dolphins absolutely tore this defense to shreds. And this Giants offense is no Dolphins offense. It's more like the Skylar Thompson Dolphins offense, I would say. But if you're in a super deep league or you're extremely desperate for a receiver to play, I don't think putting Darius Slayton in your lineup is the end of the world in those instances. I mean, if you're in any normal league, I mean, I'm not going anywhere near it. But without Marcus Williams, this secondary will be adjusting, and Darius Slayton, that's pretty much all he does, is run in a straight line and burn people over
sometimes
the top.
Sometimes catch it, sometimes does.
So if that's the case, I mean, there's worse people to start in a super desperate situation, I guess.
I love the way you sold that too. It's just super, if you're gonna lose anyway, and you want a guy who may not help you lose as bad, Darius Slayton could potentially maybe be your guy. Just really selling the Darius Slayton there. But let's move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Pretty encouraging from Kenny Pickett. I know 3 points or whatever they scored is not encouraging, but the fact that he threw for over 300 yards last week, where Mitchell Trubisky, the most he's thrown this entire season was 207 in a single game. Very encouraging from Pickett. He's obviously stringing together a lot of really tough matchups in a row, including the Buccaneers here. So I'm not starting him by any means, but I think it's just better news for the receivers. Deontay Johnson led the team with a 25% target share. George Pickens took a little bit of a step back and had 15% targets and 76% of the snaps. He was close to 90% last week. But I'm not too worried because he turned that into 6 catches for 83 yards. So Pickens is just kind of like that guy. And I think if they can establish Pickens on the outside, You establish Claypool a little bit. You establish Deontay Johnson. You kind of have an offense where Pickett can go even any which way and kind of just make plays. So I think Pickens should be a flex play going forward. Obviously, his upside has the potential to be like the number one receiver on this team, which feels like the way he's trending. With the money they paid Deontay Johnson, I don't know if that's ever really going to be the case, but I would imagine, Deontay Johnson, also another guy who is prone to injuries and missing time. It seems like he's more dinged up than anything from time to time, but if Deontay ever does miss time, I think Pickens kind of vaults into the wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 2 conversation. Najee Harris losing more and more work to Jaylen Warren. Last week, he turned 11 carries into 20 yards and only played 49% of the snaps. So I am staying far away from Najee Harris in this matchup against the Buccaneers.
I agree. This is another tough matchup, and it's going to keep coming for Pittsburgh. Their schedule is looking really rough, and they're already at 1-4. So tough for them. But yeah, I mean, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, both startable. I think last week's game script was a little bit wacky, so we'll get more clarity. But it does seem like Pickett likes throwing the ball to both of them.
Yeah.
And I agree. Najee Harris is definitely sketchy for now. I also think, they were getting pummeled last week and probably just lost a lot of snaps just to get him off the field in a game that they weren't going to win anyway. But that doesn't mean I want any part of him against this Bucs defense either. And you just don't know how much he's going to be able to produce in this offense that has looked really, really bad. Going forward, I wouldn't necessarily sell Najee for nothing, which I feel like is the route a lot of people are going. But I'm not excited about starting him any given week either for now.
So it kind of begs the question, because it's a very popular topic right now. Are we buying Najee? Are we selling Najee? Are we holding Najee? Because personally, for me, I'm kind of trending towards the hold side, right? Because I feel like the matchups, as you alluded to, are going to get better down the road, because right now it's just got like their worst matchups of the year all strung together. The matchups should get better going forward. Ultimately, he's still, your first round pick. And I know that means jack shit, like at this point during the season, like where you drafted someone. But at the same time, you don't really want to dump him off for a guy like Devin Singletary, who I had to trade for, or something like that. So I would hold Najee. That's my opinion. I don't know if you mentioned before you don't want to sell him, but no.
I don't really want to buy him either.
Yeah, so we're holding. We're not happy about it, but we're holding Najee, the fantasy analyst group here. Buccaneers side, Leonard Fournette obviously coming off a huge game, 10 catches last week. Brady seems to be dealing with a bit of an injury. It seems a lot easier for him to just kind of dump it off rather than kind of waiting for a guy like Mike Evans or Chris Godwin to get open downfield, which makes sense. Typical Brady fashion is want to take those hits. And that Grady Jarrett hit last week, brutal call, absolutely brutal call. The Falcons realistically could have won that game if that call went the other way. But absolutely brutal call. Grady Jarrett, he had this like sack on third down against Tom Brady, which nothing was wrong with it, but of course it was called roughing the passer, and the Buccaneers ended up winning. But yeah, not great. Rachaad White also, he saw 39% of the snaps and 9 opportunities last week, including 4 targets, meaning the Buccaneers running backs last week saw a 28.8 target share, which is, for running backs, absolutely absurd. That's huge. So it's like, think about it, percentages wise, it's close to 33%. 1 out of every 3 throws almost are going to a running back. And it's over 1 out of 4. So positive news for Rachaad White as a guy who continues to be involved. For me, he's going to continue to be kind of like this desperate start. He always has that touchdown upside if they get close. That passing work is going to be coming his way as well. That was kind of a specialty coming out of college. A lot of people touted him as like the best pass-catching running back in this class. Between him and James Cook, it was kind of close. But yeah, so I think he's a guy that you can continue to start if you're really desperate going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Steelers defense has looked pretty questionable, missing TJ Watt. So it's pretty simple. You're starting Leonard Fournette, you're starting Mike Evans, and you're starting Chris Godwin. If you need Rachaad White in there, I know the running back market is tough. The depth, go for it. But yeah, it's that simple, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And you remember how I said I made an error? Because right here look what I have next. I knew it. I knew there was an issue. So we're good. We're doing good on time, kind of, but it's all right.
Yeah.
Next year we have the Los Angeles Rams versus the Carolina Panthers. Running back room for the Rams right now is a complete mess. This offense as a whole is just a complete mess, other than Cooper Kupp. So, and Tyler Higbee. So, I'm not starting any of these running backs. Carolina has been pretty bad against running backs, but I'm not going to bet on either of these guys really coming through. Allen Robinson kind of getting similar treatment to guys like Darnell Mooney and Chase Edmonds. He just kind of seems like he's droppable as of right now. Darnell Mooney, obviously that script changed yesterday, but Allen Robinson, he's the same guy he was last year. He's just on a different offense, right? That's just kind of who Allen Robinson is at this point, unfortunately. Cooper Kupp returned to practice on a limited basis on Thursday, so he should be good to go. And on the Panthers side, just we can move things along. Baker Mayfield injured. PJ Walker gets to start. DJ Moore's stat lines with PJ Walker, right? And we have a total of 2 games of the last 2 years where PJ Walker played 4 out of 7. So 4 out of 7 targets for 24 yards last year. And then he had a bigger game in 2020 where he had 7 out of the 11 targets for 127 yards plus 21 rush yards. So kind of a mixed situation here. But Walker did simply say that he wants to put the ball in his playmakers' hands, and I would say that DJ Moore qualifies as one of those playmakers. They're 10-point underdogs. That's going to force them to throw the ball a bit in this game. I think DJ Moore is actually startable in this game. Long-term with PJ Walker, I'm not excited about it, but first game back, kind of a statement game for the Panthers. I think they try to get the ball to guys like DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey and just say, like, hey, Matt Rule, suck it. Like, this is what you should have been doing this whole season. And because you didn't, now you're fired. So, plain and simple there. But, yeah, so I'm actually going to start DJ Moore this week if I have him.
Mm-hmm. Just an interesting note, Aaron Donald hasn't practiced yet this week. So, I mean, that he's usually kind of an exception to that rule. He often misses practice and then plays anyway. He's Aaron Donald. But obviously him missing any game is kind of a decently large swing.
Yeah.
And with the Panthers just firing Matt Rule, you often see a lot of teams come out firing after their coach gets laid off and playing hard for the interim coach. We saw it with the Raiders last year, especially right out the gate. But Ben McAdoo is still there, and I'm not a big fan as a Giants fan.
Is he the interim?
No, he's just the offensive coordinator.
Oh, okay.
I'm sick of this offense, really. I'm not expecting it to improve with PJ Walker, but I am expecting it to get back to its roots. And I'm dealing with a bit of a start-sit situation with DJ Moore that we'll get into with one of the later games that we talk about. If I'm still here, I should be. I'm just... I don't really know what to do with this offense. You got to start McCaffrey. I do like DJ Moore. I think PJ Walker understands that DJ Moore is probably his best bet outside of McCaffrey.
Yeah.
And he's going to get the ball in his hands. And we already talked about the Rams. It's Cooper Kupp. I think Matt Stafford is borderline startable. I mean, he's just going to throw the ball to Cooper Kupp 15 times, and that usually amasses enough yards and touchdowns to make him
Tyler
startable.
Higbee 15 times at this point, too. I think no other tight end in the league has more targets than Tyler Higbee, than maybe Travis Kelce.
I don't even think Kelce does at this point. Yeah. It's crazy how many targets he's been getting. So I guess you start him, too. Again, there's just not really any tight ends that you feel great about starting outside of the top 3 or 4. So you're probably starting Higbee as well. And yeah, the RB situation is just disgusting. I was a fan of buying low on Cam Akers before. I guess I still am. He's probably going for nothing right now. So you may as well take a shot in the dark. But at this point, you can't feel good about putting any of them in your lineup. Allen Robinson, no way. Yeah, there's
No way.
It's the Cooper Cup show.
Yep, that's what it's looking like. But let's look at the Seattle Seahawks versus the Arizona Cardinals. So Rashad Penny out. What does this mean for Kenneth Walker? That's kind of become the big topic lately. A lot of people have differing opinions. I'm a little more on the cautious side. I do have him in a league, and I am going to start him. But, Rashad Penny was total hit or miss. He was starting to do a lot better towards the tail end before he got hurt and, unfortunately is going to miss the rest of this season. But Walker's almost exclusively used as the early down back. DJ Dallas came in the passing downs. I don't think that's going to change. So you're getting Walker as the primary early down back. I don't know. Like, I love, if you're going to look at the talent and you're going to look at the rookie, I actually did have Kenneth Walker as my RB1 of this class over Breece Hall, which at this point seems like, why would you do that kind of thing? Because Breece Hall looks great. But Kenneth Walker, my nickname for him was like lightning in a bottle. I mean, this guy has the opportunity to turn any play into a home run. He did it last week against the Saints. So I think he's in a good spot against the Arizona Cardinals here. I would start him, but I'm not going to, he's not a must start for me by any means. And, looking at DK and Lockett, the Cardinals' perimeter cornerbacks are some of the worst in the league. They're ranked 91st and 47th in coverage. So DK and Lockett are going to keep doing their thing. James Conner expected to miss this game and potentially more, as well as Darrell Williams, which means Eno Benjamin season is here. He's basically a must start this week. So I know you have Eno Benjamin. You snagged him from me in the waiver wire. That's fine. But you get Eno Benjamin here. Rondale Moore also continues to operate in the slot, playing about 91% of the snaps, with Greg Dortch kind of getting the boot and playing just 3% of the snaps. So Rondale Moore is going to continue to be that flex/wide receiver 3. We have DeAndre Hopkins coming back next week on Thursday night against the Saints. So be aware for that as well. Any quick thoughts on the Cardinals or Seahawks here so we can move it along?
Yeah, just everything you said is true. Just one or two
you
things
said
you
again.
didn't mention.
I didn't hear that part.
Everything you said is true.
Oh, okay, cool. Awesome.
Including me picking up Eno Benjamin this week. But yeah, just two things you didn't quite touch on. I mean, Geno Smith is a borderline must start in my opinion this week. I mean, this Cardinals defense is just atrocious. Yeah. And Geno's been dicing up pretty much every team he plays. I don't think anybody thought that we would be saying this soon into the season or at all this season. But yeah. I mean, DK and Lockett, I don't see how you could really bench them unless you're really deep at receiver. And Ken Walker, I'm sure most owners will be starting him. Geno Smith is going to be in my lineup. I have Geno Smith in a league. I'm playing him. Yeah, and DJ Dallas, just to touch on him, I do think that he has he's like a borderline stash for me with the way this is going. If Walker were to get hurt, I don't really know what else they'd do besides DJ Dallas. And as you said, he was getting some of the passing down work last week. So that was my original plan, was to pick up DJ Dallas instead of Chase Edmonds when we executed that trade. But I think DJ Dallas got picked up a few hours before we got it done. So, yeah.
Unfortunate, but it's the way it rolls. What's funny is in a couple leagues last week, right before going to this week, I actually picked up Eno Benjamin in like 3 leagues. I didn't, of course, apply that to our league because I never do anything correct in that league, apparently. But, yeah, I picked up Eno Benjamin in like 3 other leagues, so I'm starting him everywhere I have him, which is great. Kansas City Chiefs versus Buffalo Bills. This is going to be a great game. I'm looking through the games right now between Seattle and the Rams. This should be like the prime game that we get to see on TV. Yeah. As a New Jersey resident, I often get stuck with the Giants and Jets games. So I'm just making sure neither of those are taking up the 4:00 slot because that'll just ruin my day. But Kansas City Chiefs against the Buffalo Bills. We know what the Chiefs' offense is at this point. I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire kind of fell back to earth a little bit last week. He didn't, unfortunately, turn 7 touches into 20 points like he has been doing every single week. And I don't think he's going to get that opportunity this week against the Bills either. So I'm going to be weary of him. The Buffalo Bills corners and secondary is still banged up. They might be getting healthier as time goes on, but they're still banged up. So I think Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Juju Smith are both desperate flex options as they're not getting consistent targets. We obviously know who Travis Kelce is at this point. 4 touchdowns last week. Are you kidding me? I was already creaming this guy in our other league, our crazy points league. And then to add Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce stack on top of that, it scored like 350 points, which mind you is like, we have 18 guys starting, I think. 18 or 19 guys starting, including like 7 IDP.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. But so 300 is not like, it's not your typical score. So just don't worry about that. But as for the Buffalo Bills side, I mean, we know Josh Allen is. I do actually like Devin Singletary in this matchup. It seems like whenever Buffalo's in a game where it's going to be close or they're actually competitive, Devin Singletary can actually be used a lot because, last week they didn't really get to use him all that much. James Cook kind of got more work towards the end of that game. So I do actually like Devin Singletary in this matchup. I think it's going to be close and they're going to have to dump it down or use him a little more. He is still their best running back, in my opinion. I think James Cook can become that guy. And he slowly kind of is becoming that guy, but it's still Devin Singletary's job right now. Receivers wise, I mean, Gabriel Davis is always one play away from shattering fantasy football. I mean, last week, 3 catches for 2 touchdowns and over 150 yards. So we know who Gabriel Davis is, and it's even if he's not consistent, it's so hard to leave that upside on your bench, right? Like if you have a guy who can get you like a solid 10 or 12 points, that's fine in your flex. But I'm going to have a guy who can either get me 4 points or 40 points in any given week. Like I want that guy in my flex because in fantasy football, one guy getting you 40 points is going to win you that week. Like in most cases, right? Unless the whole rest of your team like totally craps to bed, like that alone will win you the week. So that kind of upside, I don't want to pass up on. He's going to be in my lineups.
Yeah, I mean the Vegas total for this game is 54, which is just absurd. They're expecting a lot of points, as should everybody. Travis Kelce is probably going to go insane as per usual at this point. Yep, I'm pretty much done starting Clyde. I've been stashing Jerick McKinnon on one of my benches. I don't know if he'll ever become a viable start, but Clyde certainly isn't. I mean, McKinnon's been out snapping him every week.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, pretty much every wide receiver in this game I like. As you said, MVS and Juju. Gabe Davis. I have Isaiah McKenzie. That's the situation I find myself in. I don't yet know if I'm going to start Isaiah McKenzie or DJ Moore. I guess I'll find out on Sunday. Even Khalil Shakir. I mean, I know I can't expect 4 Bills receivers to put up viable fantasy weeks, but I can expect that all of them have the opportunity to do so. And you know that one of them will likely, at least one of them will bust. But between the 4 of them, it's kind of a gray area. I mean, with McKenzie healthy, I don't know how many snaps Khalil Shakir will get.
Exactly.
It's definitely a risk playing either one of them, I suppose, just in case the other gets more snaps. I do lean kind of towards McKenzie in that case. But Gabe Davis, obviously Diggs you're playing, and Gabe Davis, I can't find justification to bench him.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what's really interesting about this Buffalo Bills offense too is that each receiver has their own role. So when Gabe Davis was out, it wasn't like Isaiah McKenzie is now a full-time starter. It was, okay, Jake Kumaro is now the full-time perimeter receiver next to Stephon Diggs. And then, and then Isaiah McKenzie is still sharing the slot with Jamison Crowder. And now that Jamison Crowder is going to be out, I think he's on IR for the rest of the season. Basically, Khalil Shakir kind of just becomes Jamison Crowder in that equation to where unless Isaiah McKenzie is out like last week, I don't know how much we're going to see Shakir on the field. Seems like McKenzie is still their guy in that point. If he wasn't producing, then I'd say, okay, there's a chance he splits with Khalil. But I mean, if you look at what McKenzie's done over the last couple of weeks, before he got injured, he's been killing it, especially with James Crowder out. So I think it's kind of a Greg Dortch, Rondale Moore situation where Greg Dortch, when Rondale Moore was out, was like a weekly starter. And the second Rondale Moore comes back, now Greg Dortch is playing 3% of the offensive snaps. So, and I think before last week, Khalil Shakur wasn't even active for full games as well. So I think Isaiah McKenzie's a great start this week. DJ Moore is kind of like a hopeful upside, like, come on, he could do it. Like, I'm rooting for you, DJ, in this game. And Isaiah McKenzie seems more of like the solid play. So I don't know. That's going to be a tough decision. That's a decision you'll probably have to deal with. I think McKenzie probably has more upside too, even.
So do I.
Sounds like you just talked yourself into McKenzie.
All right, let's try and get through these two games quick.
Okay, we'll go through it. I don't want to make you late for class, but we'll do this. Philadelphia Eagles versus Dallas Cowboys. Quick question: who would you start, Jalen Hurts or Geno Smith? Because somebody asked me that, and I was like, okay, it's got to be Jalen Hurts. But against the Cowboys, who have been solid, and Geno Smith has like the matchup of a lifetime. Do you like? I had to hesitate, and I never thought I would do that. Week 6 into fantasy football, but here we are.
I do think I would start Jalen Hurts. I mean, this offense has looked borderline unstoppable until last week, ironically against the Cardinals defense. But I think with the Cowboys pass rush, whether or not Micah Parsons plays, this is a good pass rush. But if Parsons plays, it's an absolutely absurd pass rush. And I think they're going to force Jalen Hurts to run. And that means that you're starting him. He has such a high floor. I mean, I can't. I don't think I could see myself ever sitting Jalen Hurts. This offense has been so fluent all season. And I mean, even no matter what their game plan is, going through progressions, one read and run, just design runs, whatever they do, I think Jalen Hurts is going to be on the move a ton in this game. And I don't think you could sit him.
Got it. I agree. Other Eagles players, AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, starting both those guys. Dallas Goedert, he's going to do his thing. Running back wise, Miles Sanders, I might fade him a little bit against this Dallas Cowboys matchup. I think it's going to be more of Jalen Hurts, and rather than Jalen Hurts dumping it off to Miles Sanders, which hasn't really been the case this season, he might just kind of try to do it himself with his legs. So from the Cowboys side, probably fading Zeke and Pollard both in this game. Not excited about either of these guys. We don't know if Dak's going to be back, but it's seeming like it's going to be Cooper Rush yet again. Receivers wise, I have no problem starting CeeDee Lamb. He's continuing to just eat up those targets every single week. And Gallup, I think, is also a sneaky play. And I think the Cowboys are going to have to air it out here. So I do like Gallup in this match up as a desperate start. And let's just kind of move on swiftly here so we can do this last game before you get a bolt. Speaking about bolts. Oh, look at that. Ending on a good one. Los Angeles Chargers versus Denver Broncos. Eckler is going to keep doing his thing. Wide receivers, looks like Keenan Allen might be back for this game finally, but it's Monday night, so if we don't get a solid answer, and if Allen's back by early morning Sunday, you got to bench him. You just can't take that kind of risk. Mike Williams, I'm going to keep starting him as a flex, even with Keenan Allen back. Gerald Everett, not really doing too much there. Denver Broncos side, Russell Wilson kind of going through his practice week. Looks like he's going to be okay enough for that Monday night game. Melvin Gordon, Latavius Murray, and Mike Boone all swapping in at running back. So I would probably lower my expectations for Melvin Gordon. Although it's a revenge game, it's a good matchup. It's going to be hard to sit him. So it depends on your options. Cortland Sutton, you're starting every single week. Is there anything else you wanted to add about this Eagles, Cowboys, or Chargers and Broncos game?
The Eagles, Cowboys, we pretty much hit on everything. And Broncos, Chargers, I mean, especially if Keenan Allen doesn't play, it's a very tough ask to ask yourself to sit Mike Williams. I don't think that's possible. But I would say that if Keenan doesn't play, he's going to be shadowed by Patrick Surtain, which may be a problem for a receiver with Mike Williams' skill set. But even so, I think you kind of have to start him.
I think it just becomes more of a Joshua Palmer game, if that's the case. If Keenan Allen misses and you have Mike Williams against Pat Surtain, I think he just kind of becomes more intriguing for a guy like Joshua Palmer.
Yeah, definitely a desperate start
from here there. So, All right, so that's going to do it for this week. We really kind of ran through it at the end, but thank you guys for listening. Don't be, don't be shy. Feel free to subscribe, comment, let us know who you think won that trade that we talked about in the beginning. Head over to the Underdog, use code ANALYST, and we'll match your first deposit up to $100. Any final words, Luke? First ending of a podcast. How you doing?
Yeah, I made it. Just thanks for having me. Looking
May not
forward
make it
to
a class,
Sunday.
but at least you made it here.
No, I'll make it. I'll make it. Perfect timing.
Okay, great. Well, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you back again next week.
Thank you.